Yeah, so welcome. Thanks for the support of Midwest or West Coast Hunters Convention. Be sure to donate. It's for a good cause, and of course, all the speakers and everybody that's working here is all doing that for no money. We do it because we love the cause, and we love the crew that does these that does the convention, and we're looking forward to being able to do it physically next year. I hope so we can come out and see old friends. It's been a long dry spell of not being able to hang out with our friends. So we're looking forward to being able to do that in the very near future, hopefully next year. So this presentation is on designing a haunted house. And for those of you that don't know me, I started off trying to be an architect. I went to Texas A&M University and graduated with an architectural degree, and really kind of fell into the haunted house industry by accident. We did a little haunted house in the dormitory there while I was in college, my sophomore year, I think. And we were open for 2 nights. We charged 50 cents a head, and by the time the whole thing was said and done, we had $2,000 in our coffers for beer and other parties that we were trying to do. But I really something clicked with me. I really had a good time designing the attractions, and really had a good time trying to figure out how to scare people. And so I graduated with an architectural degree and apprenticed in Dallas as an architect for several years. But I volunteered with the March of Dimes, thinking that the haunted house might be fun to do for profit someday. And I volunteered with the March of Dimes for 4 years before I started doing my own haunted house. And of course, the first haunted house I did was critically acclaimed, but not necessarily financially acclaimed. When all was said and done, I was about $20,000 in debt, which I thought was a huge failure because a haunted house is a get-rich-quick scheme, right? Apparently not. A haunted house is a business, just like any other business. It's a 3 to 5 year payout. And it was, it's just something that I didn't realize that it takes so much time and money to recoup that startup cost that it took me a long time to be able to be profitable in a haunted house. And after a while, after doing it for several years, I had so many people coming to me wanting me to design haunted houses for them that I created a company just to do that. And I have owned haunted houses periodically throughout my 40 some odd years of doing this. But basically what I do is help people get started, people that are in the industry trying to figure out how to make money, how to figure out how to make money. I've got a seminar tomorrow that actually talks about how to make money in the haunted house, how to position yourself for the best opportunity to do that, which I would invite all of you to join me for that as well. But when I first started doing haunted houses, I had just graduated from architectural school. So we really a lot of that stuff was still in my head. And that's weird. Oh, the slideshow is not working. There we are. And one of the main principles of architecture is that form ever follows function. So the concept is that you don't want to, you're trying to design from the inside out. What you're looking for is, if you hire an architect to design you a home, something to live in, the first thing he should ask you is how big is your furniture? Do you have a king size bed or a queen size bed? Do you like a nightstand? Is there going to be a dresser involved? Is there going to be a seating area? Do you want a seating area? Do you want to be able to see the TV from the bed? And all those parts are arranged on a wide open piece of paper. And then only once those items function with each other, there's plenty of room to get around the bed. There's plenty of room. You got to have to go to the bathroom and go to the closet. Where are all those pieces? It's only then do you draw the lines of the room around the furniture. So the concept of designing from the inside out was fresh in my head when I started doing haunted houses. And the principle from architecture is that the design of a space or any object for that matter should be primarily based on its intended function or purpose. So, and what is the purpose of a haunted house? From the standpoint of design, the purpose of a haunted house is to scare the crap out of people. If there isn't anything that could be done within the levels of, insurance and code and good tastes, that people will not try to do to scare people. And so this is our appointed goal. But how can you do that with the architecture? Of course, you do it with the actors. Of course, you do it with the sets. But how do you do that with the architecture? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing we have to figure out is who we're trying to scare. Who is the hardest person to scare? When you're thinking about going to a haunted house, when you think about going through, and I learned this pretty early on, I'd be standing outside my haunted house, listening, watching people come out, and there'd be 2 or 3 groups that come out laughing, crying, scared to death, having a great time. And then I'd have one group that would come out and they'd say, "Oh, that sucked," just like stabbing me in the heart. And then the next few groups would come out, they'd be laughing, having a good time, scared to death. And then another group would come out, or another person would come out, "Oh, that wasn't scary at all." And so I just started looking to try to figure out what was going on. I'd go run through the haunted house and make sure that the actors were doing what they were supposed to be doing, and they were. And it didn't take me very long to figure out that the people that were saying that they weren't afraid of my haunted house was the same target market. And he's the hardest person to scare. And that is a 21-year-old white male. He's going through the haunted house with his girlfriend, and with a date, with a group of his buddies, and in no way, shape, or form can he afford to be seen screaming like a girl in the haunted house. So he's walking through the haunted house, repeating to himself in his head, "Nothing's going to scare me, nothing's going to scare me, nothing's going to scare me." So he became my target. He's the one that I aimed my design at from there on. Because a 14-year-old girl's going to scream at anything while she's in the haunted house. They're just having a great time. It's that guy that's going through like a tough guy. He's the one that I want to target. He's the one I want to scare. He's the one that I want to jump. He's the one I want to scream like a girl. Because if I can scare him, everybody else is a piece of cake. In my opinion, scaring people is like telling a joke. It's all in the setup and the timing of the punchline. And as far as setup, what we're talking about setup, set design. We're talking about the lighting, the mood lighting, the theatrical lighting, making it harsh and coming from odd directions. Crazy soundtrack. There's some other seminars today about soundtracks. Be sure you catch those. And the level of detail. One thing we've noticed about haunted houses that have a high level of detail, while the people that are going through those attractions don't necessarily, it doesn't register that there's that much detail, but their subconscious picks it up. The subconscious mind is constantly looking for danger, even today. It's something that was way more important, when we were all cavemen. But even today, the subconscious mind is always looking for danger, always looking to see what's going on. And it takes in a massive amount of information that doesn't really register with the mind, particularly when you're just walking through something. So the level of detail, a high level of detail, at least making the room look like what it is supposed to be, is going to help suspend that disbelief and help scare people. And then for me, the punchline is a startle scare. Somebody popping out and scaring the people going through. It could be an animatronic, but more typically it's a live actor that's doing something that the people going through are not expecting. So how do you scare somebody? You do something that's a surprise or startle. Sudden unexpected movement, an actor appearing out of nowhere, a sudden noise like an air cannon or something dropped on the floor, and dropping stuff on people, doing something overhead that's acting like it's falling on people, a wall that leans out or something like that is a great opportunity to scare people. You have to do the unexpected. It has to be something that's not telegraphed. If they expect it coming, then it's not going to get the startle that you're looking for. The appearance of imminent danger, something is happening in the room. You want to make people afraid to stay where they are, not afraid to go forward, so they'll move on through the attraction. So that you make sure that the actor that's in the hallway is behind them, pushing them forward and not backing them up. Misdirection, we stole this from the magic community, and now we show them something that they're supposed to be afraid of, that they think they're supposed to be afraid of, and then come at them from a completely different direction. And also the opportunity to use darkness and the unknown. I mean, people aren't afraid of the darkness. They're not afraid of the dark. They're afraid of what might be in the dark. So having a dark hallway with whispers and something on the floor or something on the walls that they're touching um, uses their imagination, to build creatures and monsters that you couldn't afford to purchase or build yourself. And darkness is cheap, and it's very easy to do, and it's very effective to scare people. Using the patrons' insecurities, falling, phobias like clowns and dots. When I first started doing haunted houses, I started looking at what people were afraid of and collecting phobias so I could put those all in my haunted houses. And people are afraid of everything. There isn't anything that somebody's not afraid of. They're afraid of holes. They're afraid of height. They're afraid of the color purple, for God's sake. So it doesn't. There's too many phobias for you to play with. You just have to pick the ones that you think are going to fit inside your attraction, and somebody's going to be afraid of it. If you look at the elite haunted houses around the country, the majority of them have a very detailed storyline. One of the things that you see periodically when you go through a haunted house, especially a first-time designer, they typically will have kind of a shotgun approach to characters. You're going through a haunted house, and there's Jason in one room, and there's Freddy Krueger in the next room, and there's an alien monster in the next room, and then there's the It clown, and then there's Frankenstein. And the problem with that is it doesn't lend itself to any kind of a consistent story. We're in the entertainment business. A haunted house is entertainment, a frightful entertainment, but it's still entertainment, and you really need to come up with some kind of a story. We're telling the people going through a story, whatever that story might be, and to have a shotgun approach of themes to where they're in a circus tent, and now they're in a castle, and now they're in a basement or something, or a boiler room. It totally screws. It keeps the mind from doing that separation of suspension of disbelief, and to be able to believe that they're really in that kind of a room. The rooms should link together. You wouldn't want to go from a bedroom to directly to a garage, and then to a bathroom, and then to a kitchen. You want them to those rooms to flow as you're doing it, so that they know, so that the people feel like they're really in that kind of a structure, and that's going to give you a much better ability to get them to suspend their disbelief. Again, the sets should look realistic, so that they feel like they're in that kind of an attraction. One of the things that I'm really big on is tall panels. The panels that I spec for the haunted houses I design are 10 feet tall. Sometimes they're 12 feet tall. And the reason to do that is so that it doesn't have that clipped off feeling. Even though a house may have 8-foot tall walls, it has a ceiling. And in a haunted house, especially if it has a sprinkler system, typically it's not going to have a complete ceiling. So to get rid of that 8-foot clipped off feeling that you get with an 8-foot panel, I'll raise that up to 10 feet at least, if not 12, to get rid of that, and to keep you from being able to see over the walls, to see lighting effects in other parts of the building, or even props that are taller than the walls. You can't scare everybody, but you can entertain them by telling them a good story. So when you're thinking about your storyline, Stephen King says a house cannot be haunted without a story, without a history. So what is that history? What kind of evil dwells in this building? What is the time frame? What kind of minions has this evil created? And why are we going into this building that we know is haunted, or that there's monsters inside? You develop all that into a storyline. And to be honest, the storyline is you're going to put that on your website, and you're going to put that on your media, and it's going to kind of direct your theme and your signature character, your icon character. It all should be interwoven and create this large synergy that all makes sense with each other. But the honest truth is that a storyline is as much, if not more, to keep the designer and the builder on the map to the destination than anything else. Once you have a storyline, and that your structure is that your storyline happens in the future, it happens in on a spaceship. When you're going through one of the conventions and you see this really cool clown mask, or you see this really cool Frankenstein animatronic, not to buy those. Even though those are really cool, not to buy them because they don't fit your storyline. So definitely, before you go to any of the conventions, make sure that you've got a firm feel on your storyline, so that you're not trying to put different props that are completely different theme and trying to make them make sense. People are constantly telling me that I have to have a clown. My haunted house has to have a clown. People are afraid of clowns. I have to have a clown. People complain if I don't have a clown. Well, if you look at the list of phobias, which I have, up at the top is darkness, bugs, snakes, that kind of stuff. Clowns is like 88th in the list, so it's behind stuff like holes, as far as the thing that scares people. So I'm wondering if it's not the actor that's playing the clown that is more effective than the fact that he is a clown. But you don't have to have clowns in your haunted house just to have clowns in your haunted house. This doesn't make any sense, and it really breaks the suspension of disbelief. The other thing that I'm really kind of against is the menacing character, the creepy character that just kind of stands in your way inside the haunted house. He's a great character for outside to entertain the line, but when you put him inside the haunted house, he can really screw up your capacity. If he's not letting people pass because he's creepy, he thinks he's scaring them, it just really is going to hurt your capacity. And creepy is the feeling that you get, or that when your brain can't decide between safety and danger. So you're going through this, you're walking through this field and you see this outline of this little girl, and so immediately your brain says, "Oh, we're safe. She's just a little girl." But suddenly you realize that she has an axe in her hand. So now your brain is saying it's just a little girl, but she has an axe. But it's just a little girl, but she has an axe. So that is the juxtaposition that causes people to have that creepy feeling to where they're not sure. When you can get the brain in a situation where it's not sure whether it should be running away or it's safe, is when that creepy feeling comes into. My question is that creepy character really scary, or is he just annoying? And in many cases, I think he's just annoying. But we can take that same concept and use it into the structure of the haunted house, into the architecture. By utilizing odd-shaped rooms that make people feel weird about it. Anything that they're not used to their subconscious is going to pick up as odd. Slanted walls. I mean, if you had a room that was just the floor was flat, but all the walls were slanted to make everyone feel off kilter. Slanting the floors and leaving the walls straight with the floors. Another thing I see a lot of haunted houses. It just makes people feel ill at ease. A soft floor. I love to take a planked floor and drop the joist in the middle of the floor and not screw it down. So as people are walking across the planks, they'll step in that center area, and that plank will deflect a little bit. And you immediately see people reach out and grab air, trying to figure out whether the floor is collapsing underneath them or not. I love doing that. A wide room that had low ceilings is going to feel uncomfortable. A narrow room that's really tall is going to make people feel uncomfortable. Harsh colors, making it crooked, making it bent, or making it look like it's falling down is always going to freak people out. And then harsh lighting. All of these are things that in architectural school they teach us not to do. And so when I design a haunted house, I just go through and break all these rules to make sure that to give people that feeling of being unease when they're walking through just the architectural space alone. And if you can get that creepy feeling before the actors are even involved, you're just further along what you want to do, which is scaring that 21-year-old white male. And so over time, I've been doing the haunted house design for over 40 years now, and I've boiled it down into two essence. One of the essentials of haunted house design, I've boiled it down into two things that I'm trying to do constantly while I'm designing a haunted house. And one of those is, how do I shorten my sight line? Why do you want a short sight line? Because then the groups can be closer together to each other and still not see what's happening to the group ahead of them if you've got a really short sight line. If that hallway twists and turns, you can shorten that sight line, and it allows you to put your groups closer together. It allows you to keep people from seeing what's going to happen to them when they're ahead of you, and it allows you to put your groups closer together and get more people through the attraction in the same amount of time. And then number two is, how do I hide my monsters? So when you're thinking about how to shorten my sightlines, you want the hallway to be as twisty and turny as possible. Hanging stuff in people's faces, stuff that they have to kind of push through, is another way that you can kind of shorten your sight line and keep people from seeing what's going on. In tall set pieces, when they walk into a room, you don't want them to be able to survey the entire room. You want them to have to look around stuff, over stuff, definitely to see the exit, you want them to be able to kind of look around so that they can't really see where the exit is and they have to hunt for it. But having tall set pieces in the room, whether it's a stack of crates or furniture or whatever it is, make sure that they just can't survey the entire room as soon as they walk in. A lot of the times in the haunted houses that I design, I'll use props and things to define the pathway rather than walls. If you went into a storage room in one of my haunted houses, there would be crates everywhere, and you'd be walking around this pathway made of crates rather than a pathway made of walls with some crates thrown in. So the ability to create pathways without even using plywood panels is huge, especially in today when plywood is outrageously priced. Design the pathway to shorten the sight line. You want to avoid long, straight hallways. So many times I'll go through a haunted house and I'll see 15, 20, 30 foot, 40 foot long hallway, straight hallway. And maybe there's some kind of an effect in there that they're trying to do, but it's almost impossible to keep the groups from catching each other, because as soon as a group sees the group in front of them and then knows there's no danger between those two, they're going to catch up. So by decreasing your sight line and twisting up that corridor, you're going to keep those people from being able to see the group ahead of you. And you just can't do it with a long straight hallway. If you've got a long straight hallway, you got to do something to break it up. There's either got to be stuff hanging in the hallway, or it's got to be pitch black where they can't see anything, or something to create to keep people from just running straight through the hallway and catching up to the group ahead of them, or being able to see whatever's going to happen to the group ahead of them before they get to the end of the hallway. Another thing you need to avoid is a zigzag hallway, something that just kind of that is 4 feet turn, 4 feet turn, 4 feet turn back, because that tends to be a straight hallway too. If you look at it in plan, it looks like everybody's turning 90 degrees and then turning 90 degrees. But sometimes there's a gap there that you can, so it becomes a straight hallway that you can see further ahead of you than what you anticipated. So you have to have some kind of a U-turn. It can't just be a zigzag. You've got to actually make the hallway turn around the panel 180 degrees to break up that sight line. Placing props and scenic pieces to block the view. Again, we talked about tall pieces or crates or furniture or something. I love to take a couch and put it on its side and put it in a place so people have to go around it, just so because then I can have a scare or somebody pop out of the cushions or something. But having set pieces to block the views is a great way to break up the sight line so people can't see very far ahead of you. You just have to twist the path as much as possible. And that's a problem in a trail. If you think about a haunted trail, those are going to be really hard to do that. You literally got to go in there and plant plants or throw up camel netting or something to be able to twist up that pathway and keep it from being long straight shots, or even a long curve is bad. So you have to really think about what you're doing when you're doing a haunted trail or something. Put a bunch of shacks on it periodically or something to break up that sight line. And then how do you hide the monsters? In my opinion, it is twice as hard for an actor standing in the open to scare people. So many times I'll go through even some of the elite haunted houses in the country, and I'll walk into this room that's absolutely amazing. It's some kind of a laboratory scene, and there's Tesla coils going off, and there's Jacob's ladders going off, and there's jars everywhere bubbling with some kind of monster, some kind of creature in each one of them. But when you walk into the room, there's an actor standing there, and they're in a great costume and in great makeup, but they're just standing there when you walk in. It makes it almost impossible for that actor to be able to scare people. A great actor can do it, but a so-so actor, which many of your actors, when you're hiring 40 or 80 actors to be in your haunted house, it's very difficult for them to be able to scare anybody. So you've got to do something that is startling. You've got to hide your actor. You got to hide your monster before people get there, or it's going to make it almost impossible for them to scare anybody. And how do you do that? Crash doors, drop panels, sliding panels, slap down, pop up, something that they pop out of, camouflaging them into the wall like a dot room or a camouflage ghillie suit kind of thing up against the wall. Curtain scares, one of my favorite things, just a curtain in the doorway, and I can pop out of that quickly. Is It Live is a bunch of props in there that look like actors, and then one or two of them in there are alive. But then, these are just the typical scares that you'll find inside of a haunted house. And just even giving, having a column in the middle of the room that the actor can hide behind, so that the patrons, when they come into the room, don't see him immediately, is what you need to do. I mean, that's you've got to give that actor something to hide behind. And further, you want to design the room around the scare, so that when you come up with an idea of what the room is going to be, the first thing you want to decide on is what is the actor going to do to scare people. You know, if he's just standing there in the middle of the room, I don't know what you're going to tell him to do to be able to scare people. You almost have to. He would almost have to be the misdirection and have another actor scare from a different direction, which you can do with an animatronic. So why do you have an actor doing that? But what is the scare? Is it a drop panel? Is it a slap down, or something where the front of the panel of a crate or something hinges down and slams on the floor? What is that scare? Once you decide what that scare is, because you want those scares to be different in every room, you at least rotate them around so you're not having the same. I've been through haunted houses that were designed by somebody that's supposed to know what they were doing for an amusement park, and it just seemed to be the drop panel out of hell. I mean, every room, the scare in that room was a drop panel of some kind. So it just got to be, kind of a joke of walking through and trying to figure out where the drop panel is. And if you can't hide them very well, then you're in trouble. So vary up your scares, rotate through all of the scares that you can think of, and make sure that you don't do two in the same row, and vary them up from location. One's on the left, make the next one on the right, or the next one that's up high, or the next one that's down low, or something. So you vary not only what kind of scare it is, but where it's coming from. What will the actor hide behind? How can the actor return to his position without the next group seeing? I see so many times at the end of the haunted house, the guy with the chainsaw will bust through some door bust out of some door behind the patrons, fire up the chainsaw. They take off running. He follows them down the hallway and stops at some point and turns around and walks backwards down the same hallway to get back to his position. Well, you're more than likely, depending upon how close the next group is, to catch the next group, going the wrong direction. Now he's in the hallway that's not wide enough for more than one person to pass anyway. He's got a chainsaw and he's in makeup. The average person that's in that hallway is going to turn around and go the other direction. So give him an active return. Make a secret passageway or a backstage corridor that allows him to get out of the way, go back to his position where he's going to pop out of, and come back out again to chase people down the hallway. So that scare is not so that he's not meeting the group going the wrong direction and bottlenecking up your attraction. And you want to hide the exit into the location from the entry. When people first step into the room, if you don't want to have the exit straight across from them, or they're just going to shoot through and then they're gone. So when they first walk into the room, you want something in the way so that they can't quite tell where the entry is. It slows them down, gives the actors an opportunity to pop out and scare them, and it keeps you from people just running through the show and never seeing anything. The other thing you should look at is what part of the group should that scare target. One of the things that I like to do is to literally put over each scare what part of the group that the guy should pop out of, the actor should pop out at. So, and the concept of that being that I've gone through haunted houses. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through a haunted house and been 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in a row in a group, and never seen a single scare. The scares are coming out. They're scaring the first 2 or 3 people in line, and the people in the back of the line never see anything, and they don't get a very good show. So if you could designate which part of the group each scare is for, and make sure that you don't forget the back and the middle. The middle is where the chickens are, where the cowards are. So that's where you really want to hit. But you want to make sure you hit the back as well as the front. Don't just give all the scares to the guy in the front. Make sure that the whole group is getting a scare. Make sure that you know how much backstage space is needed so that the guy is comfortable. You don't want to put an actor in a 4x4 box because by himself, especially because he's just going to get bored. So make sure that you either back up your backstage spaces to each other, and make sure that so that you've got multiple people that can kind of cover for each other if they had to. But it makes sure that you've got enough room for him to do what he needs to do. You can control the point of attention from the people by either lighting it and making the rest of the room dark. So if you want somebody to look at something, you shine a light on it and you make the rest of the room rather dark, or have it make a noise. If people are walking into a room and you want them to look to the left because the stairs on the right, just having the noise on the left-hand side will make those people look that direction and kind of back up to the right. And if you put the scare there, then you've got a really great opportunity to utilize misdirection to push your people into where you want to go. I love to being able to do something, some kind of minor animatronic or something that moves or some noise to push the people right into to where you want the actor to be, or where the actor is, so he can scare people. So and that brings us to facilitating the scare. Which is the best approach? If you've got a drop panel, is it better for them to be walking past the drop panel? Does the drop panel need to be directly ahead, so when they're looking right at it as they approach it, or is it around the corner? Your best option for a drop panel is not in a long straight hallway where people 2 or 3, 4 people back can see what's going on. If you turn that drop panel so that the person is turning the corner and the drop panel happens, in that inside corner edge, now he can drop that panel, scare the first person in a 4 or 5 person group, and close it again, and then scare the back of the group as well. Because you put him in a situation where the pathway turns, and the back half of the group isn't going to be able to see the front half of the group. You do that on both sides of the hallway, and now you've got a situation where you literally can scare a constant line of people past that are lined up past the room or past the scares, and never disappoint anyone. Using set pieces to create the pathway and to shorten the sight line, we talked about that a little bit. Give your actor a clear view of the patrons. You don't want to just drill a 1/4-inch hole in a panel for the actor to be able to see the people that are going by. What I use is a broken plaster sliding. I'll cut out a jagged hole in the panel, and then I'll put 1x2 slatting behind that to make it look like a broken plaster slatting of laughing plaster. And that's a great people, because not only can you do that see back and forth across a pretty wide range, but if he's a little bit taller or a little bit shorter, he can pick his own slot to look through. But you really need to give the actor a great vision of the people that are coming up, so that he knows where the cowards are. He knows where the end of the line is. So when he pops out, he can do it at the best time. And give the actor an escape. A situation like a dot room, camel net monster, or something like that, where the actor is in the room with the people. Make sure there's some kind of an emergency exit or some kind of a cubby hole for him to back into and get completely away from the group, in case the people that are outside, people that are going through are causing problems. If they start to approach the actor, and give the actor some place so that he can escape, get away from the group, and nobody's going to follow him through, into a doorway that goes into a dark corridor. But it gives them an opportunity to get away if there's a problem. Most effective scare directions. Many years ago, I was doing a seminar, and I was talking about, how delicate the design is. I had a haunted house that had a room design in it that was the best design in the attraction, and I was taking the show down and replacing the carpet and rearranging it. And when I moved that scare to a different location in the haunted house, it was not as effective. And so I was talking about, how sometimes I'm afraid to scare it to change the color of the lights and the gels and the lighting fixtures, because I'm afraid it's not going to, will decrease the effectiveness of the scare. And when I did that, some guy in the back of the room raised his hand, and I called on him and said, "Do you have a question?" He says, "Yeah, when you first had the room laid out, was the scare on the right-hand side of the patrons or on the left-hand side?" And I had to think about it, and he said it was on the left-hand side. And then when you moved it to the new location, was it still on the left-hand side, or was the scare now on the right-hand side? And I had to think about it for a minute, and I said, "No, it was on the right-hand side now." "Well, there's your problem right there," he says. And I'm going like, what? Right-handed people are more easily startled from the left-hand side than they are from the right-hand side. And it has to do with the fact that they're, kind of in a boxing stand. Your right side is protected by your right hand, and your left is kind of towards your back. So, I had been designed it, but I never knew about it. But now I'm confused. I don't know whether I should be, putting my best scares on the left or my best scares on the right and my weak scares on the left. So, but it's good to know that the scare from the left is going to be stronger. Another option that's very good is a scare from below. If you can make your people look up, it exposes their neck. And again, even from caveman days, you're always trying to protect your neck. Even the boxing stance, has your chin. You're supposed to put your chin down to protect your neck. And so if you can make them look up, have some kind of misdirection up, and then have a scare from down below, that's going to be your most effective scare. Once you kind of come up with your room design, you try to figure out how to maximize the travel distance in the room. And that typically means that you want the patrons to walk around the perimeter of the room. I've been to a lot of haunted houses that, you got to look into the room and then you turn a corner and then you're out again. You can maximize your travel distance by walking them around the perimeter room. And that's really the only way to measure one haunted house against another as far as how long it takes to go through is by the linear pathway and the people going through it. And so to maximize your travel distance is going to maximize the amount of time that they're in the attraction with the same footprint. So you've got this square room that people are entering. You want them to walk, against the wall around something that's in the middle of the room and then exit on almost on the same side that they entered on if you can. Putting the doorway directly across from the room is a huge mistake, and that I would call that a gauntlet room. And I see that a lot, even at Universal Studios when I go through their Halloween events. You'll look into this room. And there's all kinds of detail and set dressing and stuff on the right hand side. There's all kinds of stuff on the left hand side. But when that doorway is directly across the room, you don't want them to be able to see the exit, and you want to make them walk around with props or walls or whatever you're doing. Make them walk around the perimeter of the room. Again, using set pieces and other things as obstacles rather than the walls. One thing that I like to do is use the door. I always, in a real house, if you're walking down the hallway and you go into a bedroom, you're going to walk through a door frame. So I am really big about adding that realism by adding the door frame into the hallway. You don't want to just walk down the hallway and then all of a sudden you're in a room without passing through that doorway. So I build a panel that just has a door in it, or a door opening in it, and I put that in between the two. And then I can utilize the door that's supposed to be hinged in that opening. I can actually utilize that to direct people whichever way I want them to go once they go into the room. So I can have it off at a 45-degree angle, and direct those people one way or the other. And I secure that door. I put a 2x a brace at the top and something at the floor so that the door doesn't move. But it allows me to point people in the direction that they're going to without really having a prop or even a panel there to make that happen. It's just the door that's in the way, which is why they can't go to the right, they have to go to the left or vice versa. And hallways are your friend. So many haunted houses that I go through, I'll see be going through and you're going from one room directly into the next room. And the problem with that is that, again, your sight line is too long. The people that are in the first room can see what's going on in the next room. Instead of doing that, you need to put a little piece of dark hallway between the rooms and make sure that hallway turns 90 degrees before it goes into the next room, again, so that you're twisting and turning that pathway to decrease your sight line. So I do that almost exclusively all the way through my haunt. There's always going to be some kind of hallway between one room into the other, unless it's a bedroom going into a closet per se. I might do that, but I'll use a 4-poster bed and some curtains on it to break up that sight line. But rarely do I have a room that goes from one room to another room without having some kind of hallway between them. And then I put longer hallways at the beginning of the show and then shorter hallways towards the end, because I'm trying to accelerate the people going through. I'm trying to push people through the show faster. And by putting the stairs closer together at the end of the attraction versus at the beginning of the attraction, that helps accelerate the flow through the attraction. And one thing that I notice when I go through haunted houses a lot is when they've got this one room that's connected directly to the next room, is they'll put some kind of a curtain in the doorway. And it really doesn't make any sense for there to be a curtain in the doorway of a bathroom, the curtain in the doorway of a hallway or of a bedroom. It doesn't really make any sense. And what those are is a design flaw. They realized after the show was set up that the people in this room could see all the way into this room. And so they put up a curtain, or they put up the freezer flaps or the stair flaps between those two to break up to break up that sight line. And that really is just exposing a design flaw. There should have been some kind of corridor between them to keep that from happening. And that's just kind of a Band-Aid that they put on it to fix it. Unless there's a reason for there to be a curtain in the doorway, typically it's not going to make sense to do a curtain. And it also slows people up. People that walk up to the curtain, they're going to be afraid to open the curtain for fear of there being some kind of a scare on the other side of it. And it makes it hard. There are a lot of people that use curtains as an emergency exit door throughout their attraction, and then all of a sudden they come to this room and it has a curtain in the doorway. They're not sure whether they should go through it or not, because all the emergency exits before that have been curtains, and it just confuses people. So put a little bit of corridor, design that in between each of the rooms. It gives people a little chance to collect themselves and relax a little bit before they go to the next scare. But again, make those shorter as they go towards the end, so that you can accelerate your capacity. And I always design for high capacity. To be able to do 20,000 people through an attraction in Friday and Saturday for 5 weekends, you're going to have to be able to hit 700 people an hour, and that's not easy to do. So when you're thinking about designing your attraction, you kind of design it for the worst case scenario. Now you would only need that 700 people an hour for 2 or 3 hours on the big nights close near the end of the season. But when you need that capacity, you need it, and if you don't have it, you're going to have 4-hour waits in line. So making sure that you design for the worst case scenario, which is a lot of people trying to go through all at once, 9 o'clock on Halloween day when it falls on a Saturday. Everybody and their brother is trying to go to a haunted house. That you need, utilize design for that criteria, because you can always back down from that and make it a better show. But if you can design a great show that can run on 700 people an hour, which is basically a constant line, then you're going to be able to utilize that capacity when you need it. You've got to limit dialogue. When you give an actor something to say, they're going to expound on that, and pretty soon it becomes a diatribe, and they're talking for 10 minutes, and the people that are going through are going to want to stop for that. And it's really hard to get people stopped when they're going through a haunted house, and it's even harder to get them moving again. So you never want to stop the flow of patrons. You always want them passing through and going through and moving and not stopping. And if there's some kind of piece of storyline or something that you're trying to get to the people, make sure you do that in a queue line where the people are actually moving while they're hearing this storyline. Be it video or a live actor or something, but keep them moving. You don't ever want to stop them. It means no menacing actors. A menacing actor in a hallway inside the haunted house is really just wrecking your capacity. And again, I'm not sure it's that scary. It's more annoying to me because they won't let me pass, and I'm just trying to get to the next room. Do those kind of characters outside, that's great. But having them inside the haunted house is just kind of annoying. You also need to make sure your actors stay where they're supposed to be. I can't tell you how many times I've been walking down the hallway and then had an actor, jump around the end of a panel and scare me. And as I turn the panel, he's running the other direction down the hallway to get to where he's supposed to be instead of where he was. Create that kind of a scare for him with a drop panel or with some other crash door or sliding panel or something else. Create that scare around the corner for him without him having to create it himself by finding a corner. Make sure all of your scares are forward. You scare them from the top, scare them from the bottom, scare them from both sides, scare them from the back. But you don't want to scare them from at a stiff pace so that you can get some more people in behind it. and use active returns. We talked about that with the chainsaw guy. Make sure that an actor that does go out and that is supposed to be in the hallway and follow people further down the path, that he has a way to get back to his position without actually going backwards in that pathway to keep from meeting the next group coming up behind him that might be right behind him. We're going to logically order the room designs. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You don't want to go from a bathroom to the dining room to the garage. You want to be able to help that suspension of disbelief by making it realistic. You could have some kind of a nightmare scenario. I've done that before, where we had a boiler room that people entered multiple different times. So that you can kind of create a nightmare scenario where maybe the stuff doesn't fit. If that's in your storyline, then I could live with that. But typically, you want them to make sense as they're going through whatever it is, whether it's an office building that you would go through, or the break room, into where the desks are, down the hallway, and into a bathroom or something like that. They should be logical so that they make sense. I always put my best scare first. The very first thing that happens to people when they go in the haunted house, I want my best scare there. And then I put my next to best scare last to help them. Hopefully that sends them out the door, laughing and having a good time. For the line, I always put my entrance next to my exit so that the queue line can watch the people coming out and to make sure they're having a good time. It builds up anticipation. It builds up some scare factor there. And then the scares between the first and the last are increasing scare factor if I can. So I make them a little bit more effective as we're going. So maybe they're all on the right-hand side as you start, and then on the left-hand side as you at the end. I don't know. I'm still confused about that left-hand thing. But that will it'll help your capacity, and it'll help your it'll help to make the attraction feel logical. And we'll close and coming down to the end here shortly, and wanted to talk to you about a few things that I'm playing with in the design of the attractions that I'm doing. One of them is called a crossover scene. As I mentioned before, this using the boiler room as a crossover scene. In this attraction, they're walking down this hallway. This is a handrail, so they look into the boiler room. And then they leave and they go around the corner, and then they come to another handrail where they can see into the boiler room. Then they come back around and go into another room where they can see into the boiler room. And now eventually they actually enter the boiler room. So now they're going through the boiler room as they go through the attraction. And what that does for you is it allows you to spend a lot of time and a lot of money on that one room, because the people don't just see it once. The patrons go through it multiple times and see it multiple times from different angles, and it helps you to justify doing a massive amount of detailing and some really great scenic stuff in that one room by utilizing it multiple times. Something similar to that would be called a crossover hallway. In this attraction, this was a tenement building. So as any hotel or some kind of building like that would have one long straight hallway, I created this long straight hallway in the middle of the attraction, and then I piled junk up in the way. So the people were coming through here, they had to go through this room, they were back out in the hallway, had to walk around this, had to walk around the doorway into this room, went across the hallway down to the other side, then they come back here, and now they're walking down the corridor and the inside, and because of all this junk, they go into this room, and then of course, then they come across and go past it before they leave. And one of the things that's cool about this is that it utilizes, when the people first come and turn this corner, it doesn't work very good for the first group in the night, but as the show's done, they're actually seeing the other people that are the other patrons that are walking through this area, and they kind of become extras in your movie, so to speak, so that especially if the lighting is dim or you really can't see what they look like, maybe they're backlit or something, so that they're just silhouettes. But it creates this crazy scene when you first turn here, and there's a bunch of people, walking back and forth across the pathway. I see this done a lot in asylum themed attractions, to where they utilize gurneys and stuff in that hallway to create the pathway. But it's very effective. And again, you can put more detail and more stuff in that hallway because people are seeing it more often. Same but different. This is a fun thing I was playing with not too long ago, in that the patrons would come through this, and this is an asylum themed attraction, and they come into this cell block, this detention block, and all of the doors are chained shut, and they just walk through the center of the room, and there's recordings and actors that are in there that are rattling the doors and making obscene comments to the people that are walking past. But they get through that. They run the gauntlet through without much in the way of any kind of scares or anything. And then later in the show, they do the exact same thing with. They walk into the exact same room, a room that's decorated and painted to look identical, but this time all of the doors are open, and the doors actually even create a little pathway, a twisty turning pathway to go through there. And now the actors are loose and roaming around and popping out and scaring people around each one of the doors. So, and it's interesting how well that worked. I was surprised. I wondered when I first did this whether people would recognize this room as the old room, and they did. So that was pretty cool. I really got a kick out of that, and that now these are all broken open, and they freaked out because they knew that the inmates were going to be in there around them. A repeating room, another option for a repeating room. One of the things I like to do is have the entry room is that when the patrons first come in and do something, and be identical to the exit room. So the very first room in the haunt and the very last room in the haunt are the same. I'll make sure that the actor in there is in similar size with the same silicone mask on so that they look identical. And that's a great opportunity to kind of put them in a very strange, creepy feeling in that they're back in the same room where they started, even though they're not. It's something that I'm playing with, and I have done that. I have done a room like that where, back with the March of Dimes, I did a room that was I had in the middle of the show. I had a room that was identical. I had two rooms that were identical, and in the second room, I had an actor, kind of sitting on one of the props with his mask pulled up over his head, and he was totally out of character. So that when they went through the first time, the actor popped out and scared him. And then when they went to the second room, that looked to be identical. The actor was in the same costume, the same mask, but the mask was literally pulled up off of his head like he was taking a break in between groups. And when the people walk into the room, he talks to them like out of character, saying, "Man, you guys are really lost. What are you doing? You guys already went through here. You're going the wrong direction. Go this direction." And again, that was a way just to psychologically kind of freak people out. I don't know how much it helped or not, but people talked about it. So it was kind of an odd thing that was fun to play with. Order flip. This is another thing that I've done just a little bit. It is tough on your capacity. It can slow your capacity down. But I started noticing when people were lining up to go in my haunted house that they before they get to the front door, they've already decided what their order is. They know who's going to be first. They know who's going to be last. They know who's going to be in the middle. And they've already kind of decided that order. And so what I started doing was just a little short corridor that when the people go in, this door opens, they're forced to go to the left, and they turn a corner, and it's a dead end. And you've got to put a scare or something at the end of them to force them back around. But by making them turn around, now you've reversed their order. And so that freaks people out. They're now in the opposite order. The ones that were more afraid in the back are in the front. And it doesn't take them long to rearrange, but it's just something that I do that I've been playing with to try to freak people out to reverse their order on them so that they have to think about what's going on. But it can slow down your capacity, so you want the ability to on a busy night to flip it, and so that they're just going straight in. So when you're thinking about designing your attraction, there is no perfect design, all of the stuff that I discussed in this are my concepts, my thoughts. That's kind of the stuff, the cutting edge stuff that I'm trying to do, the new ideas that I'm playing with. There's more ways to scare people than there are people willing to be frightened. So the way you're doing it is great. If you can take anything that I've said today and utilize it in your own attraction and your own designs, great. If you think it's all hogwash, that's fine too. It doesn't bother me if you're not utilizing my ideas because I'm having fun with them. But no design is perfect. Everything is a trade-off. You have to, when you're measuring one attraction against the other, in this version, the scares might be right in the order that you need them to be, but the distance, the travel distance isn't as long as it is in this other attraction that doesn't quite have the rooms in the order that you'd like them to be, but they're okay. So everything is a balance. You need to do multiple designs. You can't just do one drawing and say, okay, that's it, let's build it. So you want to balance all the factors. So after I've done a design, I look at the pathway distance, and I measure one haunt against the other as far as pathway distance. I look at what the best room order is. When I'm going through them, does this make more sense, or could I flop these two rooms and make it better, and make sure that the stairs are in varied location and very tight. I don't want to scare everybody from the right or everybody from the left. I want to make sure that we're scaring them from all directions, and I want to make sure that the type of scares are not the same, so I don't have two drop panels in a row or anything like that, so people aren't expecting what's going on. But if you're not doing at least 6 different plans for your attraction, then you haven't explored all the possibilities. And sometimes I even do more than that. I've done attractions where I was in the 10 or 15 different versions of the plan, just trying to come up with the best variation, the best room designs that fit the concept and fit the scheme. And many years ago, people called me up and you would say, I can't afford to hire you, Leonard, but don't you have a floor plan that you're not using this year that I can have? Well, the answer to that, unfortunately, was no. And it kind of blew my mind in a way, because I couldn't imagine taking a floor plan that someone else had built, someone else had drawn, and then trying to cram my room designs, my concepts for the rooms into those spaces. It just kind of was foreign to me, because again, my concept of designing a haunted house is from the scare out, not from the walls in. So that's that's how I design a haunted house. Again, there are many different ways to do it, and there are many haunted houses that are very effective at doing it in other ways. But this is my concept, and hope you guys got something out of it. And since so many people were trying to get me to give them a floor plan that I wasn't using, that I actually took a bunch of my early floor plans and printed them into a book, and now I sell that. It's actually it's $10 off if you buy it this weekend during West Coast Hunters Convention. And thanks for listening. I'll take any questions now. If you want an outline of this presentation, just shoot me an email at any of the addresses, and I'll shoot you a copy of the outline. It won't have all the photographs and stuff in it, but it will be the outline. So that's where we're at. The needs.
We did have one question in the chat that said, "Have you ever had any big safety or code issues to overcome?"
Yeah, code is always something that you have to worry about, especially handicap code. It's kind of rough in that if you're doing any kind of a raised platform like a spinning tunnel or something, the building code it requires a ramp. A ramp can't be any more than 1 in 12. So if you're going to raise that, if the bottom of your bridge across your spinning tunnel is 2 feet, that ramp has to be 24 inches, or it has to be 24 feet long. So you have to really think about legally trying to figure out how to make that work. A ramp that's that long, you never want it to be straight, and if you turn it, then it has to have a 5x5 platform on it at some point. So if you have the choice, build the building with a leave out in the floor so that you can sink their spinning tunnel down into the floor, so you're just walking onto it directly. The other option would be to put stairs on at least one side, and then have a bypass. You could make a steeper ramp coming out of it if there was a handicap bypass to allow somebody with a wheelchair or a walker or something to go around it instead of going through it. Theoretically, they're supposed to be able to go to everything, but that doesn't necessarily always happen. So, but yeah, ramps are a problem. The building code, you have to sprinkle the building, so it'd be really nice to be able to put not even non-flammable black plastic across the top of your attraction and cut all that excess light that's bleeding from other locations out. But you can't do that if it has a sprinkler system, because the sprinkler can't go through the plastic. You're allowed to obstruct the ceiling with something that's 50% porous. So like snow fencing, the wooden snow fencing that's got the wire twist between it, that's about 50%. So you can run that down the hallway. You can kind of cut some plywood corners out and make kind of the corners look like like there was a ceiling with some, some plaster slats screwed to the top of it to kind of give that feeling, that ceiling feel. But but there have been cases where theoretically you're supposed to put a sprinkler system under a staircase. So if you had a staircase in your attraction someplace, you're supposed to put a sprinkler head underneath that staircase, which is a total nightmare. So there are a lot of codes that in lighting code, you're supposed to have X number. I think it's 1 foot candle of lighting at the floor, but I've never seen that enforced. The majority of the people that go through a haunted house for an inspection do it, with what they want all the lights on so they can see what's going on. So there are some codes in there that are questionable, but in most cases, we're actually a very, very safe industry. There are bumps and bruises and people falling down and hurting themselves periodically, but for the number of people that we put through attractions, for no one to get seriously injured or rarely get seriously injured, we're a pretty safe industry. So and keep up the good work. I mean, and one of the things that happens a lot is every year I'll hear people say, "Oh, they changed the codes on me this year." Actually, in this last in 2020, they actually did change some of the codes. It doesn't really affect the haunted house industry too much, but they changed a lot of codes in the special amusement building section. But the codes have been the same really since the 80s. The only difference is enforcement. Sometimes a local fire marshal is going to allow you to get by with something that may not be allowed in the code, like extension cords or something like that. I see that a lot. That an extension cord is not allowed in the code, but so I have seen a lot of municipalities allow that as temporary wiring. And then when that fire marshal retires and they got a new kid that comes in and all he knows is the book, he's going to say, "Nope, you can't have extension cords." Well, we've been using extension cords for 30 years. Too bad. Next year you're not going to be able to use it because that's in reality against code.
You might have answered some of this, but someone asked, is being handicap accessible always necessary?
Theoretically, yes. If the building is 2 stories, the levels of the space have to be accessible. But if it's only 2 stories, then you're not required to have an elevator. So both levels have to be accessible, but you don't have to have vertical access. So you don't have to put in an elevator theoretically. Although I did have to argue that with one building department, but it does say that in the code. Even new construction, 2 stories is not required. At least it wasn't last time I checked to be accessible. But yeah, you can. And the other thing about that is a haunted trail. A gravel or dirt is not considered a handicap accessible covering, pavement. So every trail that I've ever been to is against handicap code as far as that goes, because you're not legal to send people through something that is dirt or even gravel. So but again, that's those kind of things are the number of people in a wheelchair that go through a haunted house is so minor, so small compared to the number of people that go through that it doesn't really make sense. But you can get stuck for that, so you have to look into it. And a bypass, that you call it handicap bypass, sometimes that will appease the people making the rules. When the handicap code first got strict and they started really pushing it, there was an architect that was tied to a wheelchair that would go around and tell people that your space is not handicap accessible, your restaurant or your bar or whatever is not handicap accessible. You can hire me to do the drawings and we can fix it, or I can sue you, whichever you want. Luckily, that kind of thing is died down and it's not as prevalent as it was when it first happened. If there's a way to make money out of it, somebody will.
There's another question that what can you do to break up conga lines? Quote conga lines.
Well, you try to accelerate the flow off the front. You're not supposed to have a choice of direction, a choice of pathway inside of a haunted house, because then it becomes a maze, and if it's a maze, the rules change. But if you walk into a room and there's something in the middle of the room and you can go around it on the left or you can go around it on the right, if a couple of groups get up behind somebody that's moving really slowly, which is the problem, you have somebody going through the haunted house really slowly, you're going to have groups back up behind them. So if you give the groups behind them an opportunity to go around the group in front, they'll do it. So if you have at least about a quarter of the way in, or maybe a third of the way in, and then 3/4 of the way in, if you have a room that there's the ability to go on both sides of a piece of furniture or something, then that'll at least alleviate that bottleneck there. And one of the things that I've preached about before is that if you're at the front of your attraction and you're letting the people into the attraction, it doesn't make sense to count out 7 people and say, okay, you're a group, go. If that's your max, because there's no social bond between those people. If you've got 2 couples that come up to the door of a haunted house and you say, okay, you 2 couples are a group now, and you send them in together as a group, there's no social bond. So there's nothing to keep them from separating. So what's the point? I send people into my attraction as they come. So if you come as a couple, I'm going to send you in. If you come as 3, I'm going to send you in. If you come as 4, I'm going to send you in. And what I vary is how far the groups are apart from each other, what that gap is between the groups. If I'm only sending in 2s and 3s, then that gap is going to be a lot smaller than if I have a group of 8 that's trying to go in together. I'm going to put a big gap before them and a big gap after them. Because if you have a situation where 2 couples are going through the haunted house and you send them in separately and they catch up to each other, a group of 4 isn't a big deal. But if if you're sending them in groups of 7 and you get 3 groups connected to each other, and you got a conga line, and if the haunted house was not designed to scare a conga line, which it should be, then you're not going to get any scares, and those people are going to have a horrible experience. So you design the haunted house to be able to take a conga line. So if you need it for a couple of hours on Saturday, Halloween, you can run at that capacity and still give a great show. The rest of the time, the show will even be better than that because your capacity is lower. But you definitely want to. But once they get to a conga line position, it's hard to get them out of it. And that's one thing that going multi-element, which is what we'll talk about on tomorrow, helps, because if you've got a 50,000 square foot haunted house and you've got one group going through it really slow, you're going to have a mess, because you're going to have not only a conga line, but a conga line that's moving really slowly behind that group. If you took that same attraction and broke it into multiple pieces, at least that group is going through each section slowly, and then you can reset when they get in line to go through the next one. If you have a single massive haunted house, the conga line is really going to hurt.
I have another question. Do you use any digital design programs for your blueprint mock-up? So if so, any ones that you prefer? I
do, because my architectural background. I started off doing AutoCAD when they first came out with the program. And some guy set a computer on my desk one time, and he told me to put away my pencils and triangle, and I was going to learn how to draw on a computer. And so I've been doing AutoCAD really since it was still a yellow screen or orange screen. So I use AutoCAD. It's very expensive. It doesn't like 3D, but I still use it because it's what I'm used to, and I'm fast with it. I do use SketchUp now for, especially if I need something that's 3-dimensional. AutoCAD does not like 3-dimensional. AutoCAD does not like SketchUp files either. So if you have anything that's 3-dimensional that you're trying to move from SketchUp to AutoCAD, I don't do it because it freaks AutoCAD out and crashes it. But because there's so much information with the 3D. So I do some SketchUp. It's a very easy program to learn. I cursed it when I first started trying to use it, because it didn't have some of the commands that AutoCAD had. But as I got better and better at it, now I'm more mad at AutoCAD for not having some of the commands that SketchUp has. So, but any of the CAD programs out there probably are fine. There's VersaCAD. There's all kinds of different CAD. It's just whatever you can find inexpensively and learn to use. For a long time you could buy a $10, design your own house, design your own home CAD program, and those work fine. I mean, it's really just lines. It's just a way of of getting the ideas, the stuff that's in your head onto paper so that you can hand it to somebody else to build and to work out the problems, work out the issues to make sure that it's most effective. But yeah, I mean, I highly recommend CAD. I mean, once you draw something in CAD, then you never have to draw it again. You make it a group, or you make it a block, or you make it a component, and then you can just pull that out of a library. That's the other thing that's nice about SketchUp is SketchUp has an internet library where you literally can go on there now and pull up somebody else's haunted house plans and look at them, and they're drawn in 3D. They might even be rendered with different scenic stuff on the walls and stuff too. Any other questions?
None in the chat, but if anybody has anything to ask.
I'll take that as a no. Well, we're actually a little bit over time. So if there aren't any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email if you have a question that you didn't want to ask in public, or if you have anything that you'd like to share with me on what you're doing and what your cool stuff that you're coming up with. Be sure and let me know, or put it in the chat and we'll talk about it. But thanks for listening, and I hope you got something out of it, and everybody have a great October 2020. What was nice about, great 2021, and what was nice about 2020 is that almost all of the haunted houses that got open did very well. So we're looking for a big October this year, and we're hopefully that everyone else that wasn't able to open last year was able to get into the mix and get open this year, and we're looking for a very, very strong Halloween.
Leonard, my friend, I want to thank you for once again. Leonard has been coming to our convention since year one, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. And again, fantastic lecture, sir.
Thanks, Ed. My pleasure.